Good evening and welcome to the Selectmen's meeting for October 22nd, 2013. Call the meeting to order, and could we have a roll call, please?
Colin McNabb present.
Bob Lamont present.
And Sue Licio present. I'd like to make notice that this meeting is being tape recorded. 1.3, Chairman's additions or deletions. Well, I have a change to the additions or deletions. We have an addition of 3.5, an addition of 3.6, an addition of 3.7, and we are excluding the deletion of number 6. Okay, so we are going to cover 6. Okay, now that I'm thoroughly confused. 1.4, review and approve meeting minutes for September 24th, 2013 and October 8th, 2013. Could we have those separate, please?
I make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes for September 24th, 2013.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the other?
I make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes for October 8th, 2013.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the meeting minutes for October 8th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I am going to say aye because I did attend part of it remotely. Appointments and hearings, we have none. 3.1 under meeting business. Review draft request for proposals for the lease of the Hart Library. Mr. Sheehan.
We talked about this a few weeks ago, but after the Town Properties Committee came in and spoke with the board, talked about putting the request for proposals back out on the street again, see if there's any additional interest in the building now that wasn't made obvious last year when we went out to bid or out to RFP for the building. I dusted off the old RFP, made a few changes, nothing too substantial, but I did cut out some of the things that I thought might be a little bit, or soften some of the things that I thought might be a little bit burdensome or would otherwise discourage people from interest in the building. A couple of things came up when we talked 4 weeks ago about this. One was the whole issue of accessibility and handicap compliance and things like that. There's not a simple one-sentence answer to the issue. It depends on what the extent of the renovations are and what the cost of the renovations are, and also what the use of the building is. If we were to use the building, we would be required to make it handicap accessible, both in terms of the entrance to the building and the bathrooms. For private use of the building, whether it is a restaurant, professional offices, what have you, it would depend on the nature of the renovations and the cost of the renovations, and the cost as a percentage of the fair cash value of the building. So one of the things that we don't know is what the fair cash value of that building is. So we can't easily answer the question of what would be the trigger, but it would probably be $100,000, because that is one of the trigger points for accessibility. And I think that in most cases, you could, or in looking at that building, it would be easy to envision at least $100,000 worth of improvements to that building. You start to look at windows, systems, the heating, plumbing, electrical, air conditioning, if you're going to look at air conditioning, and the condition of the ceilings and the walls. It's not hard to dream up $100,000 worth of improvements. So it's not at all unlikely that somebody would trip that $100,000 threshold and have to make the building accessible at the, both the entrance and the bathrooms. So, the other question that came up when we spoke a couple of weeks ago was whether we could simply sell the building. And we don't have the authorization to sell the building. A couple of years ago, we had town meeting vote to transfer the building from the care and custody of the library trustees to the care and custody of the Board of Selectmen, and furthermore, to authorize the selectmen to enter into a lease. Town meeting did not authorize the board to sell the property, so until such time as town meeting made that authorization, we would not be able to sell the property. So
we have some time, we can put this RFP out again. If we get interest, fine. If not, my suggestion would then end up being for the annual town meeting to put that on.
So this, if I may?
Yeah?
So in other words, any potential proposer would not know if they were going to be able to ultimately purchase the building. In other words, they would kind of go into this somewhat, not blind, but it would be unclear as to whether or not they could actually purchase the property at some point.
correct. At this point, we would not be able to enter into a lease-to-own agreement with somebody.
So
It would be simply a lease, for whatever the period of.
yeah, we're not leasing with an option to buy.
Correct.
We're just leasing.
Correct.
Because that's what we were authorized to do.
That's correct.
Well,
Which ultimately carries with it owners' rights and responsibilities on the part of the town in terms of insurance, that type of thing.
Yeah, we currently
still
insure the
maintain that?
building. We insure the building, and we do minimal maintenance on the building now. But we would structure the lease so that the tenant would be responsible for the upkeep and
Basic upkeep.
the improvements to make it habitable for whatever they wanted to use it for, and the upkeep for however long they were in there.
any questions, Colin?
No, it's worth a try, and if there's no proposals, then look at getting authorization at annual town meeting to sell the property,
Sell or lease to own?
or lease to own.
Right. A couple of things that didn't really come up before, but are issues that can't really be ignored. One is the limited parking on the property. So if we were to, and it's not such a problem if we're going to lease it, we could make some sort of an arrangement so that the tenant gets access to a certain number of spaces at the town hall lot. If we were to be in a position to dispose of the property, that becomes a bigger problem. And then the other issue is the septic system, and the septic system is, I believe it's to the left of the building, and who knows, if it would pass a Title V. I don't think that our system here is sized to accommodate that septic for that building. So that's another issue that we may not know the answer to until we go ahead and try to sell.
Okay.
And then the burden for that would fall on the seller, would fall on us.
I have one more question, please.
Yep.
It says here on the overview lease, the town of Townsend seeks to lease the building for a use allowed in the zoning district. What would be the acceptable applications for the zoning? Just so the folks out there know.
Sure, yeah, there are what we call by right uses, which you can use just by getting a building permit. Building inspector gives you a permit and occupancy permit. And then there are special permit uses. So the by right uses are municipal purposes, educational and religious uses, single-family uses, rental, no, retail, I should say, retail sales and rental of goods, merchandise, and equipment, office clerical, and restaurants, storage, and accessory uses that are typically incidental to the primary use. And then there are 4 uses that are available through special permit: bed and breakfast, dwelling units between 1 and 6 units, a mix of commercial and residential, and one that we probably don't have to worry too much about: sale of boats, campers, and farm and construction equipment.
Yeah, I see that happening.
So those are the types of uses that are allowed. It's the commercial, downtown commercial district, and those are the allowable uses. Not to further complicate it, I may regret this after I say it, but we could also look to modify the zoning if we thought that we needed to make it more attractive. Always hard to know how that would be received in the community, how the town meeting and the planning board would receive that, but that's
There's a potential.
that's also out there.
Thank you.
I have one other question. When we brought this up the last time, there were folks interested in it that were here. And one of the things that we talked about was potentially having them go over that with you. Did they review this at all? I know
No, I
Alice-
haven't sent it off to the Town Properties Committee, but I would, I think that would be a good idea to do.
Yeah, why don't we run it by them, because I think that, I don't know, I thought it was Alice that was concerned about the way that it was worded the last time. That it,
She thought it was too restrictive?
yeah, that it was
Yeah.
kind of restrictive. So if you could run it by
Sure.
them, please.
Yep. Glad to get
Not
their
that I
input.
want to hold it up, but I think it's important for them to, because they came with a recommendation of do something.
Okay, I can do that.
Do you want us to still vote on it, or?
I would say let's get the feedback from them,
Okay,
and then bring it back to the board for final direction on going out.
okay. Does that make sense? All right.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Okay, so we reviewed that. 3.2, review and approve one-day special liquor license on November 9th from 6 PM to 10 PM for Terry Roy for VFW Post 6538 at 491A Main Street. Why does this one seem different to me?
Is it the person who's responsible? Has that changed?
That changed, we've done a few for Terry Roy. It used to be Norman Richard, and then it was David Forrest?
Jack Force?
Jack Forrest.
Okay.
And now it is Terry Roy that is the license holder
Okay.
or manager.
I had never seen, you included, this says Russell Moore, VFW.
Oh, yeah, Russ is the commander of the VFW.
Okay, but I've never seen this particular piece of paper included.
Oh, yeah,
our
sometimes.
packets
Yeah,
before.
we typically include the conditions. I
Okay.
think maybe it's I think it's usually in a different order.
Okay, all right. Just making sure.
Select a motion?
I'd just like to say one thing about the, the liquor licenses, these one-day ones. Was there something that came to us a while ago that said they needed to be submitted at least a month in advance? And have they been being submitted a month in advance?
We asked for them, is it 60 days? Or 30 days? 30 days, I
I
think.
thought it was 30.
It's not a hard and fast rule, It's not an ABCC requirement. It simply is so that, we don't get them and have to feel like we need to call a special meeting in order to get
For more
something
administrative
approved.
reasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to give us time to process it and get it before you in a timely fashion.
Okay. All righty. Yes, please, Colin.
I make a motion that we approve the one-day special liquor license on November 9th, 2013, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. for Terry Roy at VFW Post 6538 at 491A Main Street.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. 3.3, discuss proposed slots parlor casino on Jungle Road, Leominster, and vote to sign the surrounding community agreement with PPE Casino Resorts, MALLC. Andy, what's happening with this?
Well, as I mentioned last meeting, we've had some discussions with, we'll just call them PPE for short. It's a subsidiary of the Cordish Companies, which is a large casino developer, nationwide or perhaps international, I'm not sure, casino developer. They are the applicant for one of the 3 slot parlor licenses in Massachusetts under the new gaming law. They have a proposal for a slots parlor, 1,250 slot machines on Jungle Road, which is just off of Route 190, near the Lowe's and Walmart, right on the Lancaster-Leominster line, just inside Leominster. We reached out to PPE, we being Townsend and some of our neighboring communities, and also our council, and we've had some negotiations with PPE to try to get ourselves designated as surrounding communities and get in the queue for some mitigation. The way that I view this, the most important of the mitigation that we stand to see out of this project is a mitigation fund that the gaming legislation created. That'll be a competitive grant application process funded by revenues from all of the casinos statewide. 6.5%, I believe, of the gross gaming revenues of all the casinos go into this mitigation fund, and the Gaming Commission will distribute that fund to communities to mitigate the impacts of the projects. For most, the presumption is that most of the impacts will be transportation related, new interchanges, traffic signals, widening roads, repaving roads, things like that. For some communities, and I think that would be the primary impact here in Townsend. For some of the communities, there might be other types of mitigation or impacts that need to be mitigated. It could be some of the societal impacts of gaming, whether it's rampant, people who can't control their gambling, gambling addiction, or there's some concern that I've heard from some communities about law enforcement impacts that could be associated with the casino. So with the help of Kopelman and Page, our town council, who also represents Lancaster, Lunenburg, and Westminster, we've all been in negotiations with Cordish, with PPE, to come up with the agreement that I've put in front of you tonight. Summary of the impact or the mitigation or the benefits to Townsend. PPE would pay the town $5,000 per year, beginning when the facility opens, and that would increase by 1% each year. PPE will reimburse the town for documented public safety calls, response costs. whether it's, if somebody, if we can clearly tie a drunk driving incident, for instance, to the casino. Somebody left there 20 minutes ago, they got pulled over here on Route 13. We can back charge that. If there's an accident and fire EMS gets called out, we can charge back to PPE, and they'll offset our costs. PPE will make an annual payment in addition to the $5,000 that would kick in once they hit $200 million in gross gaming revenues, and that would be 0.25% as the threshold amount, split between the communities, and then increasing with every $25 million above $200 million. Hard to know what that what their gaming revenues are going to be, but 200 million is what they're targeting. PPE will cooperate with the town in our efforts to secure some of that mitigation funding that I talked about before. And then there are a number of local preference type benefits to the community, construction jobs, vendor preferences, and permanent positions at the casino once it opens. And PPE will reimburse us for the cost of negotiating the agreement. So essentially pick up our legal costs in this. And then in return, PPE has asked for Townsend's support of their application in return for that mitigation that they're offering to us. So I think it's, we're 2 towns away from the casino. It's
Probably 10 miles, maybe? 8 to 10 miles, I would say.
I would say it's
In excess of 10
probably
miles?
more than 10.
Because on the other side of Leominster towards Lancaster.
Yeah, because you got to go down, you go all the way down to Route 2.
Right,
And hop on 190 and go down
Right.
that way, or you can go the back way.
right.
It's probably close to 15 miles.
15 miles.
Back way through Lunenburg, takes about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there, no doubt, and PPE agrees that there will be traffic impacts to Townsend and Lunenburg. When you look at their distribution map of where people are coming from, they estimate 100,000 trips or so per year coming from New Hampshire down Route 13. You look at a map, it's a direct line from Merrimack, Milford, smaller communities in that area. So we think that this is a fair agreement. Time is a bit of the essence, because if we don't have an agreement in place, we would have to file a petition to be recognized as a surrounding community, and we'd have to do that by the end of this month. So the time schedules have been compressed as a result of the schedule that the Gaming Commission has adopted, but we think we're in pretty good shape with the agreement that I've put before you tonight. I did put a revised one in front of you tonight. All that changed was a couple of typos that were picked up on final reading.
For the record, it's 14.1 miles.
Not bad, I said about 15.
GPSs, huh? Any comments?
I have a comment. I would support this agreement, and the reason I support it is because I think that independent of the town's position, if it's going to be built and operated, if we don't agree to this agreement, then I think we're losing out on whatever cost or financial resources we can gain from it. I don't see. I mean, it's far enough away that to me it's going to have minimal impact on the town. I don't really see any negative impact. Yes, there will be people coming down from New Hampshire to go there, and but quite frankly, the shape that Route 13's in, I don't, to me, that
Well,
doesn't.
maybe they can help pay for it
Yeah, I
to
mean,
get fixed.
I mean, it's not a lot of money, it's what, $5,000, and then a sort of a percentage of, if they reach their goal of
Yeah.
200 million in
If
revenue.
they do really well, we could see, you know,
Right.
50,000
Right.
a year in
Right.
additional mitigation.
So, I mean, my position is, Townsend's not gonna stop it by any, you know, realistically, so why shouldn't we derive some benefit from it? That's just, I mean, I'm trying to look at it very strictly pragmatic. That's my position.
I agree with that. I don't necessarily personally care for casinos, but it's going to go forward no matter what,
Right.
with our support or not.
Right.
And if we can get some sort of financial benefit from it, why not?
And I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with it. So, could we get a motion?
I make a motion that we approve and sign the surrounding community agreement with PPE Casino Resorts, MA LLC.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. 3.4, vote to reopen and close the November 19th, 2013 special town meeting warrant. Review warrant articles and vote to sign the warrant. Can you get us jump-started on that one, Andy?
Sure. A couple of things for the board's consideration tonight. We did receive a request from Chief Marshall to add a warrant article for some supplemental funding for his department. He's got some problems with his phone system over there, and as you can imagine, a police station without a reliable phone system is somewhat problematic. So he has requested, and there's a copy of his letter in front of you tonight, he's requested a supplemental appropriation of $9,806 for this project. Related to that, and that's really the nature of the portion of the agenda that says to reopen and close the agenda, close the warrant, rather. Related to that is I'll draw your attention to Article 5. Which is a general and generic budget amendment article. The intent of Article 5 was to make some supplemental appropriations for a number of departments that are running short or will run short or for whatever reason need some adjustments. We could roll the police department article into Article 5 if you wanted to. The others are, is about $630 for the Board of Health, $5,100 for the elections, $10,000 for veterans benefits, and moving some money around between the treasurer and the collector. When I first drafted the warrant, I thought, well, they're all kind of small, lump them all together. We do the whole $18 million budget in a single article. Why can't we do a couple of amendments in one? Historically, we've separated them out, and so we'd have a separate article for the health, we'd have a separate article for police, separate article for veterans. If the board prefers to do it that way, we can easily do that. I don't think it slows us down, and in some ways, maybe it makes things move a little bit more expeditiously at town meeting. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other, but now would be the time to make that call.
I'm not against rolling it into one article. However, I do think that in the interest of clarification for the folks at the town meeting, I think that it might alleviate some of the questions that might reasonably asked about, okay, if we had a figure of 25, I'm just putting a figure out there, 25,000 or 20,000, well, people would say, well, what's that for? And then I think the explanation can sometimes become lengthier
Yeah.
than doing it piecemeal and saying, okay, 5,100 is for this, 9,800 and however many dollars is for the phone system update, and, you know, it kind of makes it a little bit, I think, helpful for people to understand where exactly the money is going.
Sure.
That's just my own opinion.
Colin?
I think that it's better to leave it separated myself.
So that's three of us.
Okay.
Could you separate them, please?
Easily enough.
Thank you.
So 5 will blow up into 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, I guess. And if the board is okay with including the police request, we'll throw that in there as well.
Now, the issue, I just got it, well, I know we just got this tonight, but does it say who the vendor was? Is that appropriate to ask that question, who they have a problem with?
I don't have that information, and actually Colin asked me before the meeting, and I forget who the vendor is on this project.
Well, in any event, it needs to be done because they obviously need reliable phone service, whoever the
Correct.
vendor is.
Correct.
I mean,
And
that's
we,
the
you
bottom
know,
line.
our sound business practice model is that we use lowest price for the product that we're buying or the service that we're buying.
Yeah, I was just curious what the issue was. Well, I mean, that's a pretty significant problem.
Andy, I have a question. We're voting to reopen. Do you need us to reopen before we can say add that in?
I suppose for
To be technically
to be
correct?
technically correct and.
Let us do that then.
That's a good idea.
I make a motion that we reopen the warrant for the special town meeting.
Seconded.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous.
Yeah,
It is.
Somebody remind me, we'll need to vote again to close it.
Yes, okay. Now,
About a minute.
now, would you like a motion to separate that article and include the request from the chief of police as a
Yes.
separate one as well?
What would you like first?
You could do them as a single one if you wanted to.
I make a motion that we include the motion from the police chief in regards to a telephone communication system, and also separate out the financial articles of,
In Article 5.
in Article 5.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Okay, now, shall we go through these?
Yeah, I can lead you through. A lot of them will be very reminiscent of prior town meetings, but I think it's worthwhile to take a quick review through. Article 1 is an authorization to pay prior fiscal year bills. We have a couple, they only come up to a few $100s, so not a
Not a surprise.
not a surprise and not a big amount. Article 2 is, 2 and 3 are both articles that we have on every year at this time. 2 is to supplement the stabilization fund. 3,
What's the amount on that? Is it?
we don't have an amount
Don't have
at
an
this
amount.
time. We'll have the amount at town meeting.
Okay.
So 2 is for stabilization, 3 is for capital stabilization.
Have there been any discussions on 3 in terms of an amount?
No, not yet. We're still waiting on our free cash, and that's usually the determining factor on what goes into stabilization. Article 4 is to fund collective bargaining agreements with our 4 union groups, the highway union, or highway water union, telecommunicators, police union, and firefighters. We are hopeful, and we do have an executive session at the end of the meeting to talk about collective bargaining. We're hopeful that we'll have agreements in place with most and maybe all of the groups in time for town meeting. And that was, as you recall, one of the reasons that we pushed back the town meeting by a month or so. Article 5, we talked about. Article 6 is to amend the capital plan and the appropriations that were approved under Article 24 of this year's May town meeting. And it is primarily related to the fire station project. It is somewhat redundant. I put it on here early because I wasn't sure if the fire station would be the only project that was at play that would need the capital amendment. I don't think there's any harm in leaving it there for now. We can always take no action at Town Hall. And Chief Klein is here to talk about the project, and I think that the time to do that would be under Article 8. But Article 7 is an article that was on the Springtown meeting to transfer some money out of free cash and into the cemetery improvement fund. Cemetery did some land clearing on a couple of properties. That money by law goes into the general fund, and they have, cemetery commissioners have asked that that money be transferred out of the general fund and into the cemetery improvement fund for their use going forward. Article 8 is the fire station project, and in that we've included also the amendment to the capital plan. But the chief is here. The capital planning committee talked about this project the other night and did have some reservations about the project, and so there's a need for this board to take some direction on, or give some direction on how you want to go forward with the fire station project. And Colin, I don't know, you were at the meeting, I don't know if you want to.
Who had an issue with it?
The reservation from the capital planning committee was that some of the members of the committee felt that what we vote on at the special town meeting is in regards to land acquisition and site work rather than the entire project.
Well, why would we do land acquisition and site work if we weren't going to progress to a building?
I understand.
Just asking the obvious question.
I don't quite understand myself. My feeling on the matter was that we should bring it to town meeting and leave it up to the voters to decide.
I'm confused about what the issue is.
The committee members that were concerned about the article said, they were concerned about the budget. They were concerned about the 11.3 number.
Okay, that's one issue.
And they said, well, how do we know that this number is, even in the ballpark? And the chief and the building committee have been saying, well, it's 11.3, that's the current estimate, but we think it's going to be lower than that because there are a lot of contingencies built in because we're not that far along.
And it's just feasibility stage,
Yeah,
right.
it's similar to the school project, and as I was talking at the end of the meeting last night with Pete Collins from Heary, he said, you hate to spend a couple of $1 million on design, and in this case it would be, well, for the school it's a couple of $1 million, not a couple of $1 million for design of this project, but you'd hate to spend the money on design and land acquisition and then have town meeting say no, and then you've spent all that money for nothing to come out of it. So he made a very succinct point about the position as it pertains to the school, and I think the same goes here. I think the committee at one point seemed to want to go, or seemed to be supportive of funding for land acquisition and design, but then eventually ended up going away from that as well.
I mean, to me, that's like buying a piece of property, doing site work, and then you say, well, gee, I don't think I'm gonna build my house now. I mean,
Yeah.
why would you do that?
Right.
I don't understand the
So is that
rationale
what they're
behind that.
suggesting?
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Was there a
There was a little-
vote of the capital planning committee?
No.
There was not
I
a
don't-
vote.
there
This was a
not vote.
discussion.
It was
Have
a
we
discussion.
received anything in writing as to what their concerns are and what that was?
No.
I find it difficult to give any kind of direction or to respond to something that either was not voted on. Okay, I don't know if the majority of the committee even felt that way.
It was left that I would mention what I mentioned at the,
Well,
at this meeting. and
thank you
that's
for
it.
mentioning it.
I've done my job.
I don't, well, we don't wanna shoot the messenger here, that's. not
However, what I don't-
I'm not picking on you, I'm just
I'm
having
the
a hard
youngest of my
time wrapping
family,
my
I'm
head
used to
around the fact that we're gonna spend money for site development, but we're not sure whether or not we're gonna build it. I just don't, I can't follow that logical, or illogical sequence, I should say.
Chief,
If I might.
please.
The reason that I wrapped everything together, including the purchase of the land, is that based on information that I got from other chiefs and building committees throughout the country, was that they found that projects of this nature, if you did not wrap everything together, the tendency was that if you bought the land and did the site work, and think the project never got off the ground, that in the future, you're going to probably have to go back to that site and redo a lot of the things that you've already spent money on. I'm trying to also avoid the problems that we had when we built the harbor station. Those were, we had the land, we went in and we had the price for the project, but because of issues with the lands and some other things, it took us another 8 years to get through the project. In that time, the cost escalation were such that the monies that they allocated for the project were not enough to complete it once they had the design work done. So what I tried to do with this is look at the project as a whole, look out to the future, saying, okay, if everything went according to plans, when would the optimum time be that we would actually go out to bid? And we're looking at a 8-month to 1-year window for everything to get through the process that we have to go through. That's why we built a lot of contingencies in. I don't want to purchase a piece of land unless I absolutely have to, if we're not going to build on it. I also don't want to do site work or design work for a building that we may or may not want to build. I would rather have the community say, yeah, we think this is a viable project and we understand and we expect you as a committee to have our financial well-being in mind as you continue with the project to ensure that you get the best cost-effective product from what you're doing. And that's what we're trying to do. I've tried to explain this to the committee on a number of occasions. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time getting through to them. I just am.
Okay, so this is the capital planning committee.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe it's me, but I'm looking at this and I'm saying, does this really have anything to do with capital planning?
Well,
I'm trying to follow the
I mean-
process, whatever that process may be.
I know, and it's confusing to me.
it has to do with capital planning because it is an asset that
Meets the criteria.
meets the criteria. It's more than $10,000, it's gonna last for more than 5 years. But it's kind of a different category. It's, it's different from, buying a new excavator for the highway department or
New fire truck, right?
putting a roof on the police station
Okay,
or something
so-
like that.
Bear with me for a minute. The way that we describe the responsibilities of the capital planning, include those criteria. And now, and when we came up with that, we weren't necessarily thinking about a project of this scope,
Correct.
okay? Because had we thought about a project of this scope, we may not have written it quite the same. I can, you know, hindsight is great, but when I look at it now, I say, okay, over $10,000, lasting more than 5 years. You tend to think more of that in terms of pieces of equipment or a purchase of something tangible, not something that's of the magnitude of a building project. And like I said, hindsight is 20/20, but I'm looking at it and saying perhaps the confusion is coming in because this probably should have been written in as an exclusion kind of thing for capital planning responsibility. You know, that this becomes a little bit bigger than that. This is you know, it's a capital expense, yes, but it's not the same as the whole concept of the capital planning was to say, all right, we're going to put this amount of money aside each year, and this is how we plan for larger expenses. Okay? This is not an expense. This is a building acquisition. So I think maybe that's where some of the confusion is coming in, and that begs the question, should we think about some kind of an amendment for the capital planning committee, but I don't want to say that we'd do that now, but.
Right. Well, and in defense of the capital planning process, it is.
Within their purview.
It's within their purview, and it's something that in terms of good planning, you would want to have these things on your horizon. You know, if it's especially if it's a longer term, you know, if we're looking at a station 5 years out or something like that, you start to figure out how that's going to work in. This one, because of its size and the fact that it will require a debt exclusion, it goes into another category. Typically, what the capital planning committee is doing is they're saying, all right, we've got this basket of projects that are cumulatively worth $1 million. And this year we have $200,000, and next year we have $200,000, and the year after we have some, you know, similar amount of money. How do we jam all of these $1 million worth of projects into those limited resources? So it is sort of a different animal, but it is truly a capital expenditure.
I think that something like this fits more into the finance committee realm of the world, because the finance committee, I think, has always been the group that we've looked to say, all right, and what are the impacts down the road in terms of, you know, operating costs, and you know, impact to the general budgets, et cetera. And that's usually, that's who I'm used to hearing that kind of input from. So it's just, it's a little confusing.
Yeah, we do that kind of analysis on an internal level now.
Okay. Well, I'm at a loss. Yeah, I mean,
to
I
me-
don't know what they said, I don't, you know.
I want to kind of go back to your original statement, comment about absent any official communication from the capital planning committee with respect to issues about this, to me is really, I give it virtually no thought, because there's no communication from the committee.
Well, there is, I mean.
Well, no, what I'm saying is there's no.
Colin's trying to
But
convey it,
I know,
but.
and I appreciate that. I'm not, that's not my issue. The issue is there was not a vote by the capital planning committee to express, as a committee, their concerns. This was obviously either a minority of the committee or just loose talk that they have some concerns. To me, if the concerns were great enough to be given serious consideration, then they should have been put in an official form and officially communicated to this board. And the fact that that was not done, to me, shows that, you know, it's...
I mean, they're not here for us to ask. That's
Well,
what,
that's,
you know.
I mean...
I mean, you were there.
Yeah,
but-
and they did struggle, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, go ahead.
I'm gonna just say, this is what I said in the capital planning committee meeting, and I'll say it now, and it's gonna be, this is my position. I think we should leave it, I believe it should stay on the warrant. We
Agree.
should, in its entirety, we should leave it up to the voters and let the voters at town meeting and in the polls decide.
I agree 100% to that with that.
So, well, like I said, and Bob said, there's not an official vote. I don't understand what the concerns were. I agree with Colin and Bob that this should stay as it is. So,
The chief has something.
Chief.
One more thing. The committee and myself met with a joint committee with the Capital and Finance Committee
Okay.
a few weeks ago. And my impression is, I think they're nervous about the 11.3 number. And I think we should, as a committee, the building committee shared that concern. Unfortunately, we can't give them a hard, fast figure for a number of reasons. One, because of the length of the time between the time the voters approve everything, we get the bill specs ready for and going out, we're not going to know exactly what the numbers are going to be. The other is that if we go the design route or we have an architect, we can get closer numbers than we have today. But until you do that, this is the best we can do, and it's a picture in time. It's a caption of where the industry is today with the contingencies of this is where we think it might be in the 8 months to a year before we actually get out there and go out to bid for the building. I wish I could give them more solid numbers. I know that's what they're looking for. It's just not going to happen today.
I totally understand because, you know, the point that we're at with the school building is because it was feasibility and schematic, we've gone to that next step, but we're still not to the point of getting those estimates back yet. So we don't know yet what the bill is going to be because we've got reimbursements coming and whatnot. But we've gone to that second stage. You're still at that first stage, which is just a number, and you don't know yet. You just don't know. I have another question, though. I mean, I think Colin's right. I think that it's a matter of the town is going to have this to talk about, and the town will make a decision. Where does the debt exclusion come in?
The debt exclusion, if town meeting approves the appropriation article, approves article, what is now numbered article number 8, the debt exclusion would be on the annual ballot in April of 2014. Planned it out that way because we're trying to avoid the additional expense of a special election and what I think is a real concern of voter fatigue in town. We've had a lot of elections and a lot of special town meetings and annual town meetings in the last couple of years, and I think that it's beneficial to not have any more of those if we don't need them, and we're already looking at a special town meeting in the spring. So So the article would be to authorize the project, appropriate money for the project, and then the debt exclusion vote would be on the April ballot.
In the past, I've seen these articles written in such a way that it says pending approval of the debt
Correct.
exclusion. Will that wording be included here?
It will not. Well, it will not be unless the board wants to have a special election. What you're talking about is a contingent appropriation article. We will not borrow, or this project will not go forward without a debt exclusion under Proposition 2.5. What the contingent language does is it requires that you hold a special election within 90 days of the date of the town meeting.
And if we don't have a contingent clause in here?
Then we can hold that vote at any point. We wouldn't do the borrowing if we didn't have the Prop 2.5 debt exclusion authorization.
So this is going to,
So it could be part of the regular.
so this is going to say, to see if the town will
Vote to appropriate.
vote to appropriate. By what means? To borrow said amount, okay.
Issue bonds.
The alternative is if the board would be more comfortable doing a contingent appropriation, you could do that sometime.
Well, I guess my
90
question
days
is,
from November
if they
19th.
vote to, if we vote to approve this and there is not a contingency, what happens if in the town election, on the ballot, it's not approved? We could say yes to this, and then come April, if it does not pass,
The project doesn't go forward. We can't fund this without the benefit of a debt exclusion because of the size.
no, I
Yeah.
understand that, but my concern is that it's not in here. Is this how town council wants this written?
Town council has accepted this language.
Okay.
And again, if the board is more comfortable doing a contingent,
So you
we could have
you
an
could
election
do
in
subject,
January or February.
it's just that you wouldn't, if you did subject to a debt exclusion vote, it wouldn't have to be within 90 days, it would be
Yeah, it
at the
would.
next,
No, it would.
If you say that it's contingent on a debt exclusion, the vote has to be within 90 days
Okay.
of a special town
so
meeting.
how would you word it so that it would, the election and hopefully ultimate approval of incurring the debt would not require an additional election, but would take place
The way that it's worded now would allow it
to be
to
approved?
be on the April election,
Okay.
the April ballot.
Because to me, just to call a special election is $3,000. I mean, I know it's not in the scheme of 11,313,000, I realize this. But I think if the people at town meeting approve it, I'm reasonably comfortable in saying that it would be approved at the polls. And if it's not approved at the polls, then it's not approved, the project stops.
Yeah, like I said, we can't fund it
Right.
out of our operating
But
budget.
it would not tie us, that way it wouldn't tie us into having the 90-day election.
Correct.
I like that option only because I don't like the town spending $3,000 just to put the language in here that's within,
As long as town council has looked at it and town council doesn't think that a yes vote on this at the special is going to bind us in any way, then I don't have a problem with it either.
And ultimately, this can be amended on town meeting floor.
It could, if
I mean,
somebody
But-
could stand up and
perfectly-
say, we want to make a contingent, we don't care about the 3,000.
But if they do that, then we have to have a
You'd
special.
have to have a special.
Right.
Okay, so that
So then
that
you'd be
can be
looking at
explained to people.
Probably January or February.
Okay, that can be explained to folks then. I do have one other question, Chief. if this is approved, this would be approved in November, but not approved for funding until April. What happens to the project in the meantime?
I'm going to work with Andy, but I think we should go ahead, once we have an approval from the town for the project, I'd like to be able to go ahead and start negotiations with the landowner, be able to do some preliminary site work, some testing on the site, as well as doing some solar studies to see if we can add a solar to the project. That again will help us reduce some of our operating costs for the future if we can do that. So there are a number of steps, including the fact that I need to start to sit down with the Department of Transportation, because we are coming out of Scales Lane onto 119. We'll have to do some upgrades to that intersection, as well as put in controllable traffic lights for the trucks coming in and out of there for emergency purposes. So there are a number of steps that we can be doing in the meantime, and we can start the process for. But again, anything that to do with going forward with the project as far as funds are concerned would obviously have to wait until after the vote.
Okay, so the site work that you were talking about, you already have that?
We would go in and start the testing.
Is there not a cost associated with that?
There may be some cost associated with it. I'll have to find out exactly what that is. I might be able to get maybe some of it donated just to go in and do some testing. Don't know yet, so don't take me on that.
Yeah, my concern is that we not spend anything until April.
So, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there a little bit of money left over in the feasibility study fund? I thought there was about $4,000 left in there.
No,
I thought
No.
we used it
we
all.
used it up on.
Yeah.
the-
Oh, I thought there was
The
4,000
second
left.
piece of it.
Okay, so
There may be 4,000 that we haven't been billed for yet.
Yeah.
to
Okay.
negotiate with the property owner doesn't cost any money.
Correct.
To talk to DOT doesn't cost any money. So there are lots of things that I understand you could do. The site work would be my concern, because that does cost money.
Right. So what as I said before, there's some things that we can do to go in and do testing that may or may not cost us any money. If it does, I would obviously come back to Andy first before spending any money. But as I said, there may be some things, maybe I can get the highway department to help out to go in and dig some test holes and stuff. I do have a commitment from the landowner that once we start into the negotiations, that he will allow us to go onto the property and start some testing prior to any sale.
Chief, I don't know if this is the proper forum to do this, but I had someone approach me about 2 weeks ago, and this is a person who supports a new fire station, but their question was, and I don't know if it's sort of in the general context of this question or issue, and what they were suggesting, and I'm not sure how viable it is, that's why I'm asking you, is they were wondering if the land surrounding the present highway garage was appropriate or feasible for that. I'm just putting that out there.
My understanding it's not. I think it's got to do with the aquifer system and such. I mean, that's something we looked into early on as far as land was concerned, and we ruled that out.
Because that way, obviously, land acquisition costs would be off the table, and it would, you know, to whatever degree or whatever amount is factored in for that. If it could be done in that area, would that be a, is that something you'd be willing to at least check out?
I believe we did check that.
Okay, all right.
that out,
Yeah,
that-
there's two issues with the highway garage site. One, as the chief said, is the presence of the aquifer overlay district,
all right.
which puts limits on what you can build and how much pavement you can have, impervious surface you can have. The other is a locational issue, which is, or a response time issue. We're trying to consolidate all of the stations here in the center and the station in West Townsend. So we need to be really west
West.
of
West
this
of the
intersection.
It would impact response calls to the western.
It would really have two stations on the eastern half of town and nothing in
We
the
already
west.
discussed all this.
Okay, no, that's a fair, that's something I can bring back to this individual, and, you know,
Colin,
But
did
thank you for answering that. Okay.
These, this conversation came up at when the project was originally brought to the capital planning committee.
Okay.
About where the location would be
Yep.
and that they, and there was lots of,
Yeah.
you know, there was,
Yeah.
people
I've
trying
heard
to solve the problem?
the same comment made
Yeah.
about the land next to the highway garage.
Yeah,
so.
and the reason I said it was because of the obvious, you know, savings in terms of land acquisition, which would be substantial.
If we were just building a center station and we were gonna build a west station in the future, you might have been able to, but again, it goes back to the fact that, because of the aquifer system there.
Okay, no, that answers the question, and that's pretty, you know, there's nothing you can do about that, it's just the way it is. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're all set then with Article 8. Moving on.
So Article 9, we talked about a couple of months ago. That's an amendment or an adoption of Chapter 138, Section 33B, has to do with liquor licenses. This would allow the board in its licensing capacity to allow restaurants and other on-premises alcohol distributor, or alcohol license holders to serve as early as 10 a.m. on Sundays, Memorial Day, and Christmas Day, or the day those holidays are celebrated. This came to us as a request from the owners of Bailey's. We had talked about it when I first came to work here, I think in 2010, when the statute was amended, and at the time there was a decision to do nothing with the licensing. It's come back, and the board previously voted to include this on the warrant, so this wouldn't automatically give anybody the authority to open at 10. They would have to amend their licenses to go
So it would come
go
to
that
this-
early and come back to you. You could say, you know, yes to everybody. You could say yes to almost everybody, but, you know, if there's somebody that has a problem, you know, spotty track record, you might not give that. Be within your normal licensing purview. Article 10 is an article that I brought to the board not too long ago regarding a moratorium on medical marijuana dispensaries and treatment facilities. This would simply put in place for the remainder of this year and until the end of 2014, a moratorium on establishing medical marijuana dispensaries and treatment facilities, allow us to go through a planning process, determine where those facilities could reasonably be located, and done so in the best way of protecting the interests of the community. So buys us a year or so, essentially till next time.
Has to make that motion.
Article 11 is an article that the planning board has put forth. It is a wind energy systems bylaw. They've been working with the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission to draft this bylaw, and it is being presented to town meeting for adoption. The planning board will be the sponsors and the presenters of that. It is a fairly long article, and hopefully we won't have to listen to it be read twice
By more than one person.
by more than one person.
I don't envy the person who has to read that.
Yeah.
That
it's,
motion.
I could speed read that.
Yeah.
In fact, I might even volunteer.
11 pages, so it'll take a few minutes. Article 12 is it's an article sponsored by the town clerk that would change the way that department heads access town council. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like it. I think it's for a couple of reasons. There's no appropriation that goes along with this. There's very few controls on how the access to council would take place. I think it is violative of the charter and council has agreed on that, that it really, town meeting isn't really authorized to even address this because the authority of the Board of Selectmen is established by the charter. And the town meeting by itself can't take that authority away.
But the way that I look at it, it's also administrative. I mean, if you as town administrator call council, that's part of the administration of the town, and we don't even
Correct.
get involved in that unless it's a
Yeah, there's
legal issue.
there's a reason that there's not unlimited access to town council. And the primary one is financial. And
What's the cost per hour?
Let's talk about that, okay? Because the part that, one of the parts that I have an issue with is one that you mentioned, and that is, you know, we're talking about making, changing a law, if you will, to allow people to spend money, but not appropriate any money.
Right.
So it's like, okay, who's paying for this? If somebody calls, and I think it's important that people understand, what's the approximate cost? If we were to get, when we do get an opinion in writing, what is the approximate cost per hour that we're charged?
Our billable rate is $160 an hour.
Okay, $160 an hour. And I can remember a couple of times where we waited quite a while to get opinions in writing. And that is because if they put something in writing, they have to be extremely careful to make sure that they research everything that's related to that. It's not just it's something that has to be taken very seriously and requires a lot of time. So at $160 an hour, that adds up pretty quickly. The other thing that I have issue with is that it says accessible to department heads. Department heads, you have department heads that you have authority over. That's almost like, you know, that's like saying, okay, well, if somebody disagrees with something, they themselves can go to the attorney. That's, yeah.
I have 3 things to say.
Excuse me?
I have three points I want to
okay.
make. You can cut me off after 3.
Okay.
I am not in favor of this article for a couple of reasons. You had already said, I think, the expense. I think it would be chaotic, and that speaks to the administrative aspect. You know, over the course since I joined the board, you know, I've asked Andy about something that involved a legal opinion maybe 3 or 4 times. Every single time there was an existing legal opinion. There was no need to contact town council. And I don't trust that this written procedure will be followed of contacting the town administrator first. And lastly, it's funny that this actually, after I was elected, Kay Doyle had mentioned to me, you know, they do a free training for new selectmen. You know, you contact us and we can make an appointment. You can either come in or do it over the phone. And this came up in the conversation when I was called to make my appointment, that no towns are different, or they're all the same. You have somebody who is vested by the Board of Selectmen, the executive of the town, to be in touch with town council. Nobody does it any differently. So I don't see any need to change.
Nor do I. Bob?
I have to be careful how I phrase this. I don't want to get in trouble with the FCC. But let me just put it to you this way.
Be careful.
Yeah, I will. There's a reason that management has its role in the hierarchy. And people may not like that, may not be able to accept that, have trouble dealing with that, but you know what? That's reality. And quite frankly, I'm very disturbed by this article. Some people are elected, other people work as department heads under the direct control and supervision of the town administrator. And to me, to circumvent the management chain of command, to me, is just something that you do not do. And I think this would be a precedent that would, and I think your word chaos is an apt description for this. So, on so many levels. And I have been on this board for 9 years, and I have seen requests for legal opinions on the same legal issues that have been already decided. And you know what? Some people just simply can't take no for an answer. And that's part of being an adult. And that's where I'm gonna leave that.
My major concern is also the funding. I mean, the only budget line item that I know of is in the Selectmen's budget. It doesn't work to allow department heads to spend money out of somebody else's budget. Doesn't work that way. So I would, I'm not in favor of this article going on the special town meeting at all. How do we, do you need a motion to that effect, Andy, or?
Yeah, if the board wants to take it off the warrant, the board can do so by motion.
I make a motion that Article 12 be removed from the special town meeting warrant.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of removing Article 12 from this special town meeting warrant?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
Okay, Article 13 is one that was brought to my attention by the Treasurer Collector's Office. We currently assess a charge for certain fees that are collected by the collector and the treasurer for certain things that they're asked to do. A lot of them are only $5, and it doesn't fully cover the cost of their time. So what we're asking is to adopt Chapter 60, Section 23B, and it would allow the treasurer and collector to assess a fee more in keeping with what the real costs of their operations are.
So this is to pay for their time,
Correct.
basically?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's similar to the other fees that
That's correct.
other departments have. Okay. Any questions, guys?
Aren't they already getting assessed for whatever the relative size of the property is? Is that different from what this additional charge is?
Yeah, these would be separate from that, but, you know, as you can see, they're $25,
Yeah.
things like that, so
Okay.
they're fairly modest.
Yep.
Article 14 and 15, Articles 14 and 15 are related to curbside trash collection and recycling. 14 would allow code enforcement of the trash bylaw under what we call the non-criminal disposition, Section 1-1 of the code, and I think it's Chapter 44, Section 21D of the general laws. It's essentially, it's the ticketing statute, so if somebody is putting out more trash than they're entitled to put out, the Board of Health can assess them a ticket. And then the costs of that are laid out in Article 15. First two offenses would be a warning, and then the third offense and every offense after that would be $100 per bag. This all goes back to, we're not anxious to get into the trash enforcement business. We need to encourage recycling. We need to change behavior to encourage more recycling, less commingling of recycling in with trash, and this is a mechanism for doing that.
I have a question. The enforcing officer is a municipal recycling enforcement coordinator. We recently appointed that position.
Correct.
My recollection is that that is currently being funded through a grant.
Yes.
How long is that grant for?
I believe it's an 18-month. I'd have to look back, but I believe it's, the initial grant is 18 months. It may be extended, but it raises a good point of what do we do after that?
That's my point.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, not in a way, we are changing the law to include an enforcing officer position that is
temporary.
only temporarily funded.
Right.
I have a concern. I mean, does that obligate us to fund that position going forward? Because it's in the law that we have an enforcement person.
What's the coordinator, what's that position?
It's only a couple of hours a week. And,
But still, we're saying an enforcing officer. And right now, the enforcing officer, the only one that we have, is funded through a temporary
Andy?
funding.
I'm sorry, Sue. Andy, how much is the grant for? How much, say we had to fund it ourselves?
I'm just kind of off the top of the head, maybe it's $6,000 a year,
So what's it, 5 hours a week or something like that?
2.25.
2.25.
But my concern is not the amount of money. My concern is that, in essence, it's saying we have a permanent position. There was a position responsible for that.
In order, right, the way this is written, in order to enforce, you would have to have a municipal recycling enforcement coordinator. It should say or, Board of Health
Subject to
agent
appropriation
or
of,
some other duly appointed.
Because what I don't want to have happen is, if we put this in and the town votes on it, does that mean, we've created a new position? I mean, we've created a new position, but it's a temporarily funded position. It's not
Correct.
funded by the town. It's
Correct.
not part of the budget.
That's correct.
I just think it needs
Yeah.
to,
I'll talk
be
to the
looked
board.
at.
Yeah, I'll talk to the Board of Health about that. That's a great point.
So, I mean, I have a real concern
That is a
about
good
the way
point.
that that's written
good point.
because of the funding.
would be approving something.
I
that was
I can see bringing it to town meeting in April, saying, we'd like to make this a permanent position, or adding it to the budget to make it a permanent position at the end of the,
That's a good point.
at the end of the grant. But this is kind of putting the cart before the horse in terms of the position.
That's a good point.
Who says I don't read the agendas?
Not, I
Bob
would never
was
say
saying
that.
It was Bob.
Okay, Andy,
Never.
next one.
The last two articles are kind of odd. These are things you don't see every day. These are articles that would dispose of town-owned land, and we talked about them at the last meeting, and so the four of us understand it, or the five of us understand it. These are two parcels that the town owns. One is, the first one under Article 16 is a piece of property that the town acquired through foreclosure, through tax title, that is under the care and custody of the Board of Selectmen. The State Division of Fisheries and Wildlife is interested in the property, and is willing to buy it from us. And so the Article 16 would authorize us to sell the land to the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, and would also allow us to log it and gain the proceeds of that prior to the sale. That's kind of straightforward. You don't see it very often, but it's pretty straightforward. Article 17 is a little quirkier in that the parcel of land or parcels of land came to the town as a result of an open space residential development. And the state Division of Fisheries and Wildlife is also interested in the 2 open space parcels associated with that project. Gives them access to other land that they already own. It's a little bit more complex because it's part of a subdivision. The land that we own as part of a subdivision is part of a special permit that went along with the subdivision and is protected under what is known as Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution, which says that parkland and conservation land and water protection land shall be permanently protected, and in order to take it out of that permanent protection, has to be approved by the local legislative authority, which is town meeting, the House and the Senate, and the governor, and a couple of other stops along the way. So it's a little more convoluted than we typically see. The effect is the same as under Article 16 in that the state wants to buy it and is willing to pay us for it, and the Conservation Commission is interested in selling this property for that purpose.
And
The condition on the ground wouldn't change, it would still be protected open space.
And would whatever taxes we would normally get, would that be subject to pilot after that?
Yeah, we would argue with the state that we should get an increase in our payment in lieu of taxes. Correct.
I have a question with regards to the proceeds. Okay, Article 16, it says, transfer the proceeds from said logging to the Conservation Land Trust or act in relation thereto. And then on the subsequent article, it says, and to transfer the proceeds from the sale to the Conservation Land Fund, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to file a home rule petition with the legislature for such purpose or act in relation thereto. So maybe I just want some clarity on this. Would the proceeds from either sale go to the general fund?
The proceeds of the sale of the property under Article 16 would go to the general fund.
Article 16?
Article 16.
And that would be in the amount of what? Ballpark.
I don't know,
Okay.
and I'm reluctant
Okay.
to guess.
Okay, so Article 16 would go to the general fund.
Yep. But the proceeds from the logging would go to the Conservation Land Fund.
How about the proceeds from the sale of the land itself?
Under 16, the
It
proceeds
would go to the general fund.
go to the general.
How about Article 17?
Under 17, the commission has requested that the proceeds go to the Conservation Land Fund, the proceeds of the sale of the land. The argument behind that is that
It's conservation land anyway.
it's protected land now, it's conservation
Okay.
land now.
All right.
And that would probably be a requirement of the legislature.
Can't remember the figures.
Okay, I just wanted, just so that people out there are clear on
Yeah.
where it's going.
Okay.
So that's because of the conservation issue?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So that's the warrant. I'll make the changes that were discussed. I'll add the police appropriation article. I'll break up the budget.
And when do
Articles.
we need to sign that?
What I would suggest is that the board vote to sign the warrant as amended and to sign out of session, and I'll have it for you next Tuesday when you come in.
So we need to vote to close the warrant? Or
Correct.
to,
Vote to close the warrant and sign
with,
amended.
with,
amended.
as
as
amended?
amended.
I make a motion that we close the November 19th, 2013 special town meeting warrant as amended, out of session.
Seconded.
Did you say to
And
sign?
sign out of session.
And sign out.
Sign out of session.
Right, okay. So we're closing it and signing it out of session. Okay.
I will second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. That's that. 3.5, vote to accept a grant in the amount of $1,075 from Montechusett Home Care Corp. to Townsend Emergency Management Agency and authorize TEMA to spend that amount to print instruction booklets for citizen emergency response training.
TEMA received this grant recently. We were just made aware of it, and asking you to accept the grant and allow them to use it for the purposes that were stated.
Questions?
I'd like to recuse myself from this one because in my work, I do work with Montechusett Home Care on occasion. Not very often, but.
Okay. I will make a motion that we vote to accept a grant in the amount of $1,075 from Montechusett Home Care Corp. to Townsend Emergency Management Agency, parentheses, TEMA, and authorize TEMA to spend that amount to print instruction booklets for citizen emergency response training, parentheses, CERT.
Second? And moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Mr. McNabb is recusing himself. 3.6, vote to transfer to the Council on Aging's gift and donation account the donations received in memory of Roy Shepherd.
Pretty straightforward, as after the passing of Roy Shepherd, the family suggested that in lieu of flowers, donations could be made to, among others, the Council on Aging. Council on Aging has received $1,100, I believe, in Roy's name, $1,165. They are asking that that they be allowed to put the proceeds, those donations, into their gift and donation account to be used for their operations over there.
I make a motion that we transfer to the Council on Aging gift and donation account the donations received in memory of Roy Shepherd.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. 3.7, review and approve the following Chapter 90 requests. $15,000 to repave the turnaround at the end of Hamilton Hill Road, $50,000 to crack seal Warren Road, Turner Road, Haynes Road, Lunenburg Road, and Dudley Road.
I make a motion that we approve the following Chapter 90 requests. $15,000 to repave the turnaround at the end of Hamilton Hill Road, $50,000 to crack seal Warren Road, Turner Road, Haynes Road, Lunenburg Road, and Dudley Road.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4.1, vote to appoint Cheryl Simoneau to the Abram S. French Fund Committee for a term from October 22nd, 2013 to June 30th, 2014.
I make a motion that we appoint Cheryl Simoneau to the Abram S. French Fund Committee for a term from October 22nd, 2013 to June 30th, 2014.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Board of Selectmen updates and reports. I have, Colin is dying to read his stuff, but I got in there first, didn't I? I'm gonna read it. No.
Slide this over.
I just have a couple of notes. Had what I thought was a really good meeting last night. The high school building committee met, had a joint meeting after the regular meeting with the finance committees, selectmen, school committee from all three towns, and it was very well attended by those three towns. Some real good discussion, good questions, made us feel like we're on track, and we're in sync with the kinds of questions that are being asked. So that's good. There are some community forums coming up. Please, look in the newspaper. I don't have the dates. Andy, do you have them?
I don't, I'm sorry. No.
Okay. They are hoping to pass out some flyers to let folks know, but there'll be a community forum at the library. I believe we have a meeting that night, but hopefully people will go and ask questions and get answers. It's a really big project, a really important project, and the more input we get from folks in town, the better it will be. The only other thing that I wanted to mention, it came to my attention through a veteran in town that in the course of driving through our community and even in some neighboring communities, that although I think people are very patriotic here, we sometimes do not pay attention to the condition of the flags that we fly. And the reality is that if you look at some of the flags that are flying, they are tattered and worn. And that's a violation, actually, of the law of how they're supposed to be cared for. They should be properly disposed of. I believe the American Legion takes them.
I think the
The VFW is
The
a,
VFW takes them, so
They
that if you
actually-
do have a tattered or torn flag that you want to dispose of, you can drop it off there. Please pay attention to that because, as I said, this veteran looks at that as it's a nice gesture to have a flag up, but please be respectful by having a good flag up.
the VFW actually has a drop box outside of the building.
I
in
know
the
there's one
turnaround.
in air
It looks
that
like
I've
a
used before.
mailbox.
It looks like a mailbox,
Yeah.
and it's clearly labeled. It's quite easy. I've dropped off flags there myself on occasion.
So as much as we want to respect the people that fight for us, we should be respecting the symbol too.
I agree.
Okay. That's all I have. Mr. McNabb, you have something?
Okay, yes. Townsend Recreation's annual Haunted Trail will be held on the Townsend Common this year on October 25th and 26th from 7 to 9 p.m. Mother Newson and her Twisted Fairy Tales.
I think that's pronounced Mother Ganoose.
Ganoose. Mother Ganoose. I stand corrected. Thank you, Hartley.
Like Mother Goose?
Right.
And her Twisted Fairy Tales will take you through their dark world of once upon a time. There are no happily ever afters here. Admission is $7, $5 with the donation of a canned or boxed food item for the TEO. Questions can be directed to Townsend Rec. And the fall fair will be held on the Townsend Common from 3 to 6:30 on Saturday, October 26th as well. And there is on Saturday, October 26th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. At the Townsend Police Department, you will be able to turn in your unused or expired medications, prescription medications.
Excellent.
So this happens several times a year, and it's a great time to clear out the medicine cabinets of all your unused medication or expired medication.
And please don't put them down the drains.
Yes. Don't rush to flush, it says on the flyer.
Oh my God.
Andy, town administrator updates,
Yeah,
reports.
a couple of things. Just a reminder that Devon's Household Hazardous Products Collection Facility will be open on November 6th and 9th, and again on December 4th and 7th. Those are the last 4 events of this year until March. So it's not open in January and February. So again, November 6th and 9th, and December 4th and 7th. The information's also on the website, our website, linked to their website. Just an update primarily for the benefit of the board. You recall that we surplused a couple of vehicles recently and a generator from the fire department. One of the vehicles was from fire, one was from the building inspector, and the generator was from fire. We put those out to bid, received a total of $1,325 for those items. So proves that it was time.
Yeah.
It was time for those to move along. So I got an email late today from John DiNapoli, our municipal contact at Unitil. We had a conversation a couple of meetings ago with some residents from West Townsend regarding lighting at the substation over there.
Oh, good.
And the last time that I had been over there, the light was still there. It was turned off. What John informed me today was they have turned it off on a generally permanent basis. They're keeping it for any kind of emergency use that they may have over there, and they're going to install some smaller, more directed lighting, downward-focused lighting that will operate on motion sensors for the sort of run-of-the-mill time. So for the general security that they need over there. Things were a little slow initially after our meeting, but they've picked up in the last week or two. So
Sounds like it was a productive outcome.
glad to see that, yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll stay in touch with John on that. And
Good.
But hopefully that will be good news to the residents in that area as well. And just some announcements of committee vacancies that we have. We have a bunch of vacancies on a bunch of committees. We need 2 people for the planning board, 1 associate member, 1 full member. We need members for the recently established charter committee. Also members for the recently established fire EMS chief screening committee. The energy committee needs a couple of members. The housing authority needs members. And the finance committee, I believe, still needs a couple of members. So if you're interested, please check out our website and submit a volunteer response form, and we'll try to fill some of these vacancies.
I might
And
have
then-
somebody for you for energy.
Oh, good, good. And Chief, I think you still have openings for on-call firefighters and EMTs, is that?
Always have open.
Always have openings, so.
Do they
so-
typically live in town?
No. I actually have reached out to people in other communities that live along the border.
Right now, I have 7 that live in the surrounding communities that live right along the border area. It's tough to get people to volunteer, and if they do, they're not here very long.
Yes.
Andy, I have one question, just an update, if you have any, on the petition to the general court for the tax collector position.
Oh, yes, yes. I've been staying in touch with both Senator Flanagan's office and Representative Harrington's office. It is still in the House, has not made it out of the House yet to the Senate. There are a number of steps that all legislation has to go through.
How many hearings have they had already?
As far as I know, they've only had the one hearing that I attended at the Joint Committee, the Joint Committee on Municipalities. Last I knew, it was in the Committee on Third Readings in the House. So I will, I
Well,
haven't
my
spoken.
concern there is, doesn't their session close the 30th?
This is something that they can they can do under informal rules,
Yeah,
suspended rules. So
Okay.
they don't have to have a formal session and
okay. Maybe
Don't have
just
to be
a
formally
note
session.
a note to Rep. Harrington's staff. They should be able to start pushing that
Yeah,
through.
they've been good about keeping us up to date and pushing it along, so, but we will touch base with them again.
It would be nice if we have that all settled prior to the April election.
Yes.
Okay, so that being done, executive session.
We have to
We gotta do the
approve the
payroll
warrant.
Oh,
and the-
yeah, that's right.
I make a motion
People
that
want to
we,
get paid, huh?
I make a motion that we sign the payroll warrant out of session.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I make a motion that we sign the bills payable warrant out of session.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And executive session, please.
I make a motion that we enter executive session under General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, regarding collective bargaining, and adjourn from executive session.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. This is a call for a roll call vote.
Colin McNabb, aye.
Bob from London, aye.
Sulistio, aye. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, folks.
Thank you.